feeling today? Good? Yeah! All right. Put your rock hands up. This is what they're called. We're having a little competition. This side, you're my first verse. This side, you're my second verse. To the best song ever made. Are you ready? Yeah. Just a small town girl. Let me hear it. Come on.
Just a small town girl.
All right.
Living in a lonely world. She took the midnight train going anywhere.
Nice. All right.
Now we
second
go,
verse.
right?
Here we go. Come on.
Just a city boy. Born and raised in South Detroit. He took the midnight train going anywhere.
All right. Good job. Give yourself a round of applause. All right. Now, keep those jazz hands out, guys. These are called spear fingers. Ready? Feeling good this morning? Give me 2 claps. We can do a little bit better than that. Twice as loud. 2 claps. Here we go. 1 clap. 1 clap. Half clap. Seriously.
I'm the one.
Gotcha. When I speak, I have 2 rules. How many? 2. One is we're going to have some fun. Is that okay? Say yes.
Yes.
I mean, I could prefer to be boring. Number 2 is we're going to learn something. And today, we're going to learn some concepts that I feel can change your life. Does that sound good?
Yes.
But remember this, it's not what we know, it's what we apply. Repeat that with me. It's not what we know. It's what we apply. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you 3 of these principles that I call simple truths. Simple truths of leadership, things that we can immediately apply that will impact not just our life, but our leadership and the organizations that we're involved with. Ready to get started?
Yes.
All right. By show of hands, how many of you could be somewhere else right now? All right, look around. If you see someone with their hand not up, please check their pulse, right? Think about it. We all made a choice to show up, didn't we? Yes or yes?
Yes.
We all made a choice. All of us could be somewhere else right now. In fact, some of you I know felt like you didn't have a choice to come, or you don't even want to be here. You know what? That's fine because you are here. You still made a choice. And that is one of the simple truths to not just success in leadership, but how to achieve most anything you want in life is when you show up, even despite the fact that you may not want to, because somebody else probably isn't. And it wasn't until I met my freshman roommate. His name was Duncan. Can we say, hey, Duncan?
Hey, Duncan.
He knows this story. Duncan had a near perfect score on the SAT. He was brilliant, but he made a choice to not show up in life and in class. Now, do you think Duncan did well in college, his first semester? No or no? No. Even despite him being brilliant, Duncan, he flunked out. He flunked out because he made a choice to simply not show up. And what that taught me was intellect is very important, but work ethic can match and even beat that. The concept of showing up is extremely important. My first semester, I made a 4.0 because I decided to show up. I wasn't the smartest person in my classes, but I made a choice to not be the best, but to be my best. And those are 2 concepts that I'd like to share with you today about how to simply show up to make sure that we achieve the types of results that we'd like. You can never be the best. You can only be your best. So again, look to somebody left or right and just say, thanks for showing up today. One of the other principles that I soon came to realize was this powerful concept of thinking different. This is the second principle. We've already gotten through the first one, but this powerful concept of thinking different. As a teenager, I battled severe depression when I was younger. I was even clinically diagnosed with anorexia nervosa, which is an eating disorder. When I was 17, I made a decision to show up at Disney World and shoplift. I stole a hat and I got arrested. It was a goofy hat. Anybody here ever done anything goofy? I took that trash with me my whole life. I carried it with me. I had a lot of scars, and I didn't want anybody to know. And it wasn't until I got to college that I realized I was chasing normal. I wanted to be like everybody else, but that normal didn't exist. Nothing in college seemed normal to me, including my first-year roommate. And that is where this concept of think differently really began to empower me once I acknowledged and embraced the fact that my scars led me to who I was. Everything about my life led me to who I am. And once I realized that, I blossomed. I went from near dropout to homecoming king, struggling academically to a 4.0. Not because I was the best, but because I chose to think a little different. In fact, I remember reading this one day, this quote. It was so amazing. 73% of the average person's thoughts are negative. Think about that. How many of you have ever had a thought? Okay, look around, somebody's hand not up. You're sitting next to a zombie, okay? We all have that inner voice. Some of us, we've got two. It's a little scary. But we all ask ourselves negative questions sometimes. Why do I wait till the last minute? Why does this always happen to me? How come this? How come? We don't realize that we're asking ourselves negative questions. I chose to change the mental radio station that I was listening to. I chose to think a little different, that my mistakes actually were lessons of wisdom. My scars were beautiful and made me into who I was. This concept of thinking different was either enabling me to be successful or it was holding me back. 73% of the average person's thoughts were negative. It doesn't have to be that way. You have to change the way that you think. Here's a perfect example. Anybody ever heard of the story Roger Bannister? Roger Bannister was who? He was a runner. He broke the 4-minute mile. Excellent. But here's what we may not know about Roger Bannister. People thought it was impossible. People said, it cannot be done. Other runners, even doctors, said it is physically impossible for the human body to do this. So what were some leadership descriptors about Roger that do you feel helped him achieve that breakthrough? Persistence. Belief in himself. Not listening to the haters, right? Thank you. I didn't hear steroids. Roger Bannister made a choice to follow a vision that he had, and he thought a little different, and he showed up every single day. In fact, he even says this. You have to think different to achieve the type of success that you want. You have to think different. So right now, think of something in your life that you'd like to be different. Anybody have anything they'd like to have changed in their life? Right. I do. I do myself. We all want something different. Nothing will change until we do. And that's one of the call to actions we're going to have today is I want you to think of something in your life that you decide today, right now, it's going to change because I'm going to help make that change. Several years ago, I had one of the most amazing opportunities. I was asked to be a speaker for TEDx. TEDx is a seminar of YouTube videos about ideas worth spreading. I spoke to one of the largest TEDx groups in the Southeast, and I studied the most successful leaders. What is it about them that helped them achieve amazing breakthroughs? Is there something unique about them, a common denominator? And I found 3. One was that they showed up consistently. Number 2 is they thought differently. We'll talk about the third in just a moment. But this concept of thinking differently is not unique just to Roger Bannister, who, by the way, didn't just break the 4-minute mile. Do you think other people since then have been able to break the 4-minute mile? Yes or yes? Yes. Hundreds. Because they saw that it was what? Possible. Think about that. History said it can't be done. One person said, hey, no, it can, and I'll show you. Preach the gospel at all times. When necessary, use words. We have to show people. We have to show them what's possible, not just speak it. Leaders, we're not just good communicators, we're good doers. We influence others for positive change. So Roger Bannister thought differently. And in my TED Talk, I studied other people. Here are just a few that I selected for you today. You see Lincoln, Martin Luther King, the Wright brothers, Steve Jobs. They thought differently. Catch this even further, though. In the moment that they were pushing for their societal change, what they believed in, when everybody else thought that they were not just cray, Z. Cray cray. But they also were thought to be a little dangerous, a little radical. If someone has never said to you that your dream sounds crazy, it's not big enough. It's not big enough. What is something that you can make a choice to decide today, even if it's never been done before, it will happen? Think about the next conversation you have with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your friend, your parents. You declare to them something that is going to happen in the future, even if you don't know how, but you know it will. I want their reaction to be, who were you just speaking to? What did you have for breakfast? Again, if no one has ever said to you that your dream is a little crazy, it's just simply not big enough. And that's okay, but that's why I'm here. These people here thought a little differently. Even companies. Look at these companies now. We all know them. None of these companies were successful when they first started. They were all miserable failures. But the founders of these companies had a vision. They showed up and they thought differently. Think about it. Think about it. And when I saw this slide years ago, this changed my life. This changed my life. This simple slide right here. Feel free to take a picture. Most people think success is just easy. Oh, you never make any mistakes. But we know that success, and even think about your own life, your greatest accomplishment, didn't come easy and overnight. We know the squiggly lines is what's the test for us. It's what's going to help us learn from failure. It might even just be time. The squiggly lines is what we need to persist through. And with a vision and knowing and conditioning our mind that we just need to think differently, that can help us achieve amazing breakthrough. I mentioned to you, I dealt with a lot of the squiggly lines, a lot of trash. I wanted to forget the past until I realized how important it was for me. And I wrote my first book called Think Differently for this exact reason. And I want to give it to you today. And if you're interested, all you simply have to do is text my name to that number. Just make sure you spell Snyder right. Other goes to some weird guy in Georgia who absolutely hates me. Spell it like the pretzel. But I'm happy to give that to you today. Just text me at that number. So these amazing people in my TED Talk that I studied, they showed up, they thought different. And the third, you ready for the third? Say yes? Yes. Okay, good. Is they had a vision for what they wanted to accomplish. They had a vision. Even before they achieved it and manifested that in their life, they had a vision that they would. For example, who's this person here? Anybody know? J.K. Rowling, who wrote Harry Potter. Probably heard about this book. When she wrote this book, she was unemployed, struggling single mom on the equivalent of what we call welfare in the UK. Think about it. Walt Disney. All begins with a dream, right? He went to over 300 banks before one finally said, okay, let's give this shot, this idea that you have about a mouse. Let's try it out. Even when we went to the moon for the first time, we had a vision. We didn't know how we would do it. In fact, catch this, 3% of the time on our en route to the moon, we were actually on target. We had to continually adjust to get to the moon, and we did. We have to have that vision for what we want to accomplish. What's your vision? Do you have one? Think about what's your vision? Most people I talk with, they don't know what their vision might be, and that's okay. But that's why I'm here, is to get you to think about what your vision might look like. My vision as a kid at 12 years old was to be on The Price is Right. How many of you heard of The Price is Right? How many of you found yourself ever yelling at the TV when somebody makes a silly bid? If your hand's not up, you're lying. I had a dream as a kid to be on The Price is Right. I can't share with you that story right now. I don't have time. But what I do want to share with you is that despite everybody making fun of me and laughing at me, including my mother, I did live my dream to meet Bob Barker on stage. And I shook his hand. And I lived my dream of being on The Price is Right at the age of 22. And if you go to YouTube and type up Kevin Snyder meets Bob Barker, it's there. This article was in the paper, and this is what I want to close with. When I saw this in the paper, Snyder lives dream on Price is Right. And I thought, you're darn straight. I lived a dream simply because I had one. Think about this. You can't live a dream until you have one first, even when you don't know how. And it even doesn't matter what your dream is. What matters is that you have one. Your dream is what makes you unique. It's your fingerprint. And if somebody else doesn't believe in your dream, that's completely fine because it's your dream. It's your dream. Extraordinary leaders have a vision for what they want to accomplish. Again, I ask you, what's yours? Think about it. Extraordinary leaders have visions for what they want to accomplish. This is my vision now. She's not returning any of my phone calls or emails, but I wanted an English bulldog my whole life. So when I graduated college, guess what I got? An English bulldog. He is pretty awesome. In fact, I even named him Barker. I had a dream a few months ago, and I said, I want to live on a boat. So I sold my house, and now I live on a boat. You have to take action, too. Matches don't light unless you strike them. A match will never light unless you strike it. I know. It is good. So look to your neighbor and say, show up. Look to your neighbor and say, think different. And then lastly, look at your neighbor and say, vision. Excellent. You've done an amazing job today. What I want to leave you with is, again, that if you want to stay in touch, pick your social of choice. Notice I didn't put Yik Yak up here. I'll look at that later. But follow me. I'd love to stay in touch. And I'd love to speak with you more. If you'd like to talk about that, I'll be here afterward. Give yourself a round of applause. Thank you, thank you. That's it.